spot. That's basically when I start going around and the screen goes off. Basically, the video's over at that point. I just haven't had. YouTube took away the tools to edit these. So, I mean, to cut out pieces and things. There are other things you can do for that. They're supposed to add them back in.
I was going to just ask you that. Did
They're-
they take them away to add them for price back, or?
I don't know.
Is it only for live stream, or because like I'm pretty sure for just a regular upload it lets you like edit how the pieces and stuff like that.
Well, so if you're making it, there are some editing tools, but they may be back already. I don't know. But I generally don't edit these. Oh, and we're broadcasting now already. Okay, so let me zoom. All right, so this is where you come up when you connect with the server. This is where your actual database would be, and where your query window and things like that, where you can add data and all of that. That's not where the model is. So for the model, you want to do File, New Model. Now, if you have an existing model, you can open it, right? One of the nice things about this that's different than SQL Server is that the model is a separate file. You can move it around. You can share it, like if you work together with somebody, you can share the file. It's a lot easier than it is with the, and another nice thing about the model is that it doesn't build the database automatically. That's one reason why we're doing it in here instead of Lucidchart or something, because we can get the same effect. And it does have another advantage over even Lucidchart in that you can generate the database from this. It isn't done automatically, but you can, when you're done, go to Database, Forward Engineer, and it will create the database based on your model. And you can reverse engineer, which is if you have an existing database, you can create a model from it, right? So those are neat tools, actually. SQL Server had them once, but they took them away, and I'm not sure why. From Visio, you could do that. From Visio, you could create a database and actually create it in SQL Server, but they took that away. So I'm going to, up here, we have, when we first do a new model, it gives you some things. It says your default database is MyDB. You generally don't want that to stay the model, so if you double click it, it will bring up the properties. So down here it says the name is MyDB. Right, so I'm going to change this to Python Club. I'm going to call mine Python Club 2 because I think I created a Python Club before. You don't have to call it 2 unless you want to. All right, so that becomes the database name. Now you could add tables here. You can add different things. But probably the easier way to do it, having made that, is just to add this diagram. Way at the top here, there's a diagram. When I click it, it gives me, basically a grid to build this diagram on. Are you with me so far? Okay. So these icons are not necessarily obvious, but this is a table. When you come down here, if you mouse over it, it says place a new table. If I click that and then click onto here, don't drag. I always drag and it doesn't work. You have to click and then click. So when I double click this and then click into here, it gives me a table. So to add columns and stuff, if I double click the table, kind of like the database, it opens up a properties window where you can add things. There's other properties down here. If you want to do foreign keys down here, you can do them there, but I'll show you how to do them by dragging, or you're just using the toolbox, which is easier, I think. So I'm going to do, I think we did this before, I'm going to do members. This is one you're probably going to have. Now you might change, don't look at these as necessarily what's going to be there. I'm just going to give some sample tables and I'm not going to fill them out. We can talk a little bit about what would be in there in a moment, but I kind of just going over how the workbench works. So members is going to be the name of the table. See, when I look up here, it has members now. When I click underneath here, it gives ID members. You can leave that as the primary key if you want. If you don't like that, you can just type over it and say members ID. Right? I'll just leave it, but you can name it whatever you want. Now, it is a data type. Notice the data type here is an integer. Okay, so it assumes the primary keys are an integer. Your first field is an integer. If I want it to be a primary key, I can click these two. PK is primary key. This is not null, which means that it's required, right? If you don't know quite what those are, if you look down here, all of these are down here too. So PK, primary key. Anybody know what a binary would be?
True, false?
What?
No,
that would be like a
Boolean?
Yeah, that'd be like a Boolean, but that actually makes some sense. But actually, it's something like if it were a picture or a video or a music, an MP3 file, something that is non-character based. That'll be in binary, meaning in zeros and ones, basically. Unsigned just means when you have a number type, you have the peak of how many numbers you can have varies by 1 bit. You have to reserve a bit for a minus sign. So if you say at the beginning it's going to be unsigned, you can go out 1 more bit on the number. For instance, a byte signed byte has 254 values, and a unsigned byte has 255. Because there's 1 bit that you don't have to use to say 0 or say minus or plus. Unique is what it says. It basically just means that this field has to be unique. You can't repeat it. You can use it for things other than the primary key. For instance, if you had email field, which we'll put in here, we'll make it. If you had an email field, you could say that the email has to be unique. So if anybody enters the same email, it will reject it. Zero fill, I'm not sure is a good idea. If you have a numeric field, it says that instead of using null, use 0. When you do math, and there are null fields in the thing, so we haven't looked at those, but we will a little bit here. If you do things like sum and average and things like that, they ignore nulls. With zeros, they wouldn't ignore them, but zeros will change the value. And so you have to decide if that's something you want or don't want, right? Generated actually generates an IUD, is that what they call them? That sounds wrong. It creates a, I know it's a form, what?
A UID? Unique identifier?
UID. IUD is birth control. UID is yeah. So, but yeah, it creates a unique identifier. I use them sometimes for like in Community Assist. I had one generated for donors so that they have a number that they can compare, right? A unique number they can compare their donation with.
Would you want the primary key to be unique as well, or?
It is unique.
Or would you want to do a checkbox?
No. If it's a primary key, it is unique, period. Unique is really for something other than the primary key.
Gotcha.
Primary keys have to be unique. That's what primary key means. And then they have to be not null, too. You're not allowed to null them. You can also do...
What's an example of where we use it?
Like an email. if you want the emails to not repeat. Social security number, because you probably don't want the social security number to be a key field because that's against the law. But you might need to store but you might also want to make sure that it doesn't accidentally get repeated. Social security numbers are supposed to be unique. There are some cases where if you're comparing historical data, they do occasionally reuse them after somebody's deceased because there aren't enough of them to go around. It's a problem with the way they did it. I think now social security numbers are all random. I mean, the numbers aren't attached to anything. Used to be that it was district, state, and then number, but that doesn't give you very many free numbers, right? It's a trouble with a lot of things. It's also a problem with things like license plates and zip codes and phone numbers. They've pretty well got away from them being meaningful digits to just sort of random. All right, so I click down below that. Members call. That is not a good name for the column. So let's just do like last name. If you wanted, you could do like members last name. That's probably how I actually probably do it. It gives you varchar 45 as a default. Just like with SQL Server, you could change that up to 250. You don't have to worry in MySQL about the difference between nvarchar and varchar. Varchar is Unicode. SQL Server has the difference for backwards compatibility, but MySQL doesn't care. So it's just Unicode by default.
You want our only doing 45 characters, or we only doing up to 255?
It will go up to 255. There's a text type if you need big blobs of text. But only if you need big blobs of text. Just like in SQL Server, if you use the text type, you can't search the contents of it. You can only retrieve it. So I would probably make last name not null. You probably need that. Notice the icons along here. There's a blue diamond, means that it's required. There's a key for this, right? Foreign keys are orange, I think. And a non-required field is clear diamond. So I'm going to do first name. And I'm not going to require it because there are people like Madonna or something that only have one name. So notice it not required in one, so clear diamond.
Question, you have last, I mean, your name, capital.
Yeah, it's not.
Can you go back and forth?
Well, you should be consistent. I am not, but you should be. It does not matter in how it functions. It's not case sensitive. So, and then I'm going to do email. So I'm just going to click in here. Have to wipe out the members call. And email I will make required. Wow, how did I get all those members columns? So if you get a bunch of things like this, which I do not want, I am going to click in there and delete. Because those were all extra. All right, so email I wanted to make required. And I will make it unique so that you can't repeat. I want to do, oh yes, UQ. Sorry, I did that last period too. I kept trying to do unsigned, which doesn't work for a car type. And you might also want to make this bigger. So kind of like with, you just add like 100. And I'm going to do one more column just to show you. So I'm going to do like date added. And if you click down here, you have all these data types. Go away. including date. Right, so there's date, time, there's time, there's timestamp. You have a lot of different data types. Again, most of them, yeah, blob is actually somewhat like, it's a binary large object, is what it stands for.
So what's the difference between date time with parentheses and date time?
So date time with parentheses takes some arguments.
Oh.
Basically, it'll take arguments in terms of how far out you want to go with the date time. Do you go to the millisecond? Do you only go to the second? Do you only go to the hour? So, and I'll make this not null. There is a, you can do a default here. And I don't remember the function, but you could do like a timestamp, you know, generate timestamp or something. But I'd have to remember the exact name of the function to do that. But you can put some defaults in there. So either a default value or a default equation that results in a default value. That makes sense. You can do that in SQL Server too. So we've got this table. See how it is up here? Some people are wondering, because it has indexes, it has 2 indexes. Indexes are ways of organizing the data and also ways of making them more searchable. Every primary key has an index called a clustered index. And then there are unique indexes to keep track of whether things are unique or not. And you can add other indexes, which we're not going to, but if you're getting into database tuning and stuff, you add indexes to speed up searches. The thing is that there's a little bit of overhead for them because most indexes that create a B tree. You guys know what a B tree is? Basically, you have a top level root, and then you split out. If it's between these numbers, go this way. If it's between these, go this way. And then they split out again, and split out again, and split out again. The thing is that if you had a table with 100 million records, you could maybe get there with 5 hops, as opposed to having to go through, 100 million records to get there. So the indexes can really speed up searches. They can really slow down inserts and updates because it has to rebuild the index every time new data is added. So you have to kind of balance those two. But we can ignore the indexes. That's fine. I'm going to do just a couple more tables, and then we'll talk about what would be in the Python club, and I'll let you guys finish it, right? So I'm going to do one called meeting. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to show how to do relations. So I double-clicked it. I'm going to do meeting. And also I'm not doing every column. I'm going to leave it ID meeting. PK. The AI is auto increment as opposed to artificial intelligence. So it would make the numbers count, right? Auto count. So I'm going to, what do we do? Meeting. What would we want for meeting? Might want a meeting type. And
Well, like if it's you said it was the members versus just
yeah, I mean, if you're doing those in one table, or you could separate those up, but let's do meeting type. That sounds good. I'll make it required. Probably the date. And that I'll change to date. And then I'm going to do meeting time. And I think that's all I'm going to do on this meeting, although you probably would want like location and other things. And I'm going to do this as time. So I saw it. There it is, time. Time takes some arguments. I'm going to put a 6 in there. If you don't put any arguments in there, I think it will give you errors, though I'm not 100% sure of that. 6 would mean hours, minutes, seconds. Probably don't need the seconds, but
If you put 4, would it pick up the seconds?
possibly. If it does, if it allows that. So I'm going to do date. I want that to be in time. Okay. Seems to, it's not complaining yet. Okay, so we have that. Now, one member can attend many meetings. Each meeting will have many members, right? So we could do a linking table, and I'm going to show you a couple of different links here. I'm going to call this meeting members or attendance. We could call it attendance. Is it ENC or ANC? That looks wrong. Although it could be right. Yeah, it looks better than that. Which is correct?
It's A.
Is it A? All right. I am not going to put any columns in here. I want to show you. This is weird, and it'll take a little bit getting used to. For foreign keys only, I would use see these symbols down here with the crow's feet. For foreign keys, I'd use the solid one, but it's the only one I would use the solid one for. So I'm going to click on attendance and then click on meeting. And notice how it puts a column in here. It calls it meeting underscore ID meeting. And it is a foreign key. It has made it a foreign key. If we come down here, but it's also part of the primary key. That's what the solid line means, is that the child foreign key is also a part of the primary key of the child table. It's called an identifying relationship. It's a very subtle thing, and nobody enforces it except MySQL here, and I have no idea why in their diagram. But that's what it means.
How do you delete it if you wrong?
So you just click on the line. Click on it until you get a yellow mark. Right click now. You can remove it. So what couple of things that are weird here. You go from foreign key to the primary key. SQL Server is exact opposite. In that one, you go primary key to foreign key. This one, you click on this, and then you click on this, and you don't drag. For whatever reason, you don't drag. You just click on one, then click on the other. I wanted to show you the foreign key definition down here. If we look at this, it gives the foreign key a name. Foreign keys and primary keys are actual objects separate from the table. I went down to the bottom here and it shows foreign keys. It also tells us that it's referencing the table meeting, and it tells you which columns are being referenced. This is the column meeting underscore ID meeting, and it references ID meeting. Now, if you don't like the way it names foreign keys, names the foreign key field, you can change it. You could change it back to ID meeting or whatever you want. All right, so if you click on this, you can rename this field to whatever you want. I'm going to do this again with the members. So solid line, click, click. All right.
Did you have to go to the, you just clicked on it anywhere?
Yeah, I just clicked anywhere in the table. It's weird because, one, you're not dragging, like in SQL Server, it's just click, click. The other thing is you always go foreign key to primary key rather than the reverse, which is what SQL Server does. If you don't like a relation, if you click on the line and then right click, you can delete the relationship. or you can edit it, which will take you down to that. Okay. All right, I'm going to do one more because, as I said, this solid line is only, notice how it made both of these part of the primary key, so it's a composite key. You don't want to use the solid one for most of your tables because you'll end up with primary keys that are gigantic. Every field, every foreign key will be added to the primary key. So what you want to do, I'm going to do one more table. I'm giving you a fairly good chunk of stuff here for your Python Club. I'm going to double click this. I'm going to say meeting minutes. And you again, you guys don't have to follow my, these are just mostly to show you how the environment works. All right, so meeting minutes, I'm going to give it its own ID. I'll just let that be because I'm feeling lazy. And we want it to relate to meeting, right? We'll have other stuff in there too. But if I do the dashed one, so I'm clicking on the dashed tool over here. And then it's the same thing. I click here, and then I click here. But the advantage is it's only marked as a foreign key now. It's got that red diamond. That means it's just a foreign key. It's not part of the primary key, which is what you want. 90% of your relationships should be the dashed line, not the solid one.
The solid one is similar to the linking table from my or SQL Server.
Yeah, the solid one says that this is going to be part of the primary key of this table. So, I mean, it's basically copying, it's creating a foreign key, but it's also assigning it as part of the primary key.
And the dash one.
And the dash one just makes a normal foreign key.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I created a new meeting minutes,
Right.
I heard the words.
and then I went to.
I know some of those words.
So what you want to do,
Well, it won't even let me put in the table.
you have to create,
Because he said 90% dash
but you can click
and
do that.
and just I guess I'm missing.
It automatically starts.
Right, and if you want to use the solid one,
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking for some of
Yeah.
the other. Yeah.
So. Let's go down.
The interface.
Oh, yeah.
Click on not like that.
Yeah, it's just like.
Right, click on this word. That just removes your name.
It's 20 years ahead.
Yeah. Jesus.
Does this matter whether you have a primary key first or?
It doesn't matter what
So
order.
I'll be like, well, any idea how to make these stuff?
Well, yeah, or yeah, that doesn't maybe. Because you want to hear stuff like that.
All right, so
Well, on the
click.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
I'm surprised they're using 95. I would have thought they were using DOS. No, seriously, like that's a lot of dumb stuff still using DOS.
I can understand. Not that helpful.
Mhm.
But you
And
can
if you double click
there are
that.
people pushing buttons. or-
Exactly. Why would you ever use 95?
Sometimes when it's this small,
Nonsense.
you have to.
I mean, if you're gonna have it, do it, how do you ever do that?
All right. So let's just talk about the Python Club for a minute, and I'm going to let you guys work on it. And again, the goal today is to get like a rough draft. I'm going to look at them tomorrow. Wednesday, we'll go over it together as a group and fix it. Anything they do.
Do you want us to put in the relationships today, or just like get the
I
tables
would
together?
try to do the tables and the relationships, although I would do the tables first.
Yeah.
And then add the relationships.
Is it-
And one of the things here too is that unlike SQL Server, you do not need to put the foreign keys into the tables because you get those when you drag or when you click. Yeah,
So is it generally the case where we're only using the solid lines for the linking tables? and
right.
Everything else we use the dotted line?
Everything else should be the dotted lines.
Can you kind of explain again why that is? I know you explained it again
I
already.
heard the words, but it didn't.
It's a very subtle distinction. Technically, the solid line represents what they call an identifying relationship.
Okay. What does that mean?
So they call it identifying. This is a really subtle thing, and I'm really surprised that their designer used with it. All right, so identifying means that the primary key of the parent table is part of the primary key of the child table.
Part of the primary.
So when you do this, ID members int is part of, the foreign key is part of that primary key, composite key. And so is this. All right, so it's identifying because it might make more sense if I change those so that it looks like they're the same word, because they are the same. So like, this is like ID meeting. Oh, that's minutes. I'm in the wrong table. ID meeting. And ID members. Right. That looks, I mean, you can kind of see, and these two are both part of the composite key. So that's called an identifying relationship. And this is a non-identifying relationship because the foreign key is not a part of the primary key of the child table. It's a very subtle distinction, and I kind of wish they didn't enforce it with their different symbols. And if you get the wrong one, you're going to have a mess. Because it will keep adding all the foreign keys to your primary key. And then you'll find that it's just a nightmare, if particularly if that table has a child table, because you have to copy all of those.
And so basically, the linking table is the only instance where
The
you would
linking
need
table is the
to-
only instance I could see this, or if you had a legitimate one-to-one relationship. Most one-to-one relationships, even if they're logically one-to-one, end up as one-to-many on the diagram.
So we can't go wrong using one-to-many for things that are just like.
No, and in fact, if I were to, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to give you time, but let's say if I can get this line selected. Okay, I think I got it. So I'm going to just do a dashed one. Right, so it just makes it a regular foreign key. But if I come down here and click on primary key, it turns solid.
Oh.
And if I were to uncheck it, I'll do the first one, then it turns. Right. So it's not fatal when you do it, except that if you end up with a lot of, if you look down in this and there's like a half a dozen keys, then you probably use the wrong one, but you can just uncheck them and things should be okay. So, last couple of things. You can save this file. I'm going to save model as. Notice I've got Python Club and test in here already, so I'll call it Python Club. I called it B or 2. Let's call it 2. I'm going to save it. And if I close this all out, I can do File, Open Model, Python Club 2, open, and it'll all come back. And it's something you can move around. So you could take this file home and load it into Workbench. It is a Workbench file, so it'll only work in Workbench. But you can take it home and load it into Workbench. You can share it if you're working together, and have the same diagram. When you turn this in, because what I'm looking for, you can turn in the Workbench files, although I still kind of prefer a picture of it. The reason being is that if you turn in the Workbench files, I have to download it. I have to open my Workbench. I have to do all of that to look at it. So we'll look at this. I'll look at these tomorrow. By the end of the class today, wherever you are, just turn it in and we'll finish it Wednesday. And then Wednesday, I'll also show you how to create the database and how to enter data. And then next week, you can do the enter data in the SQL. And I'll give you some SQL tomorrow, Wednesday too. So do you need some review of what's in the actual Python Club?
That would be nice.
So I'm going to go into oh, I just closed it out. I didn't want to do that. I just want to go to Canvas.
Is it the PDF?
Yeah.
Is it under modules?
Yeah, if you go under modules. All right, so is there anybody in this state where you're no longer seeing your canvas? It usually means they dropped you for some reason and you should talk to them. Let's see. So I'm going to go to modules. And I'm going to go to MySQL and the Python Club PDF. Right, so it is basically the idea of a school club that talks about Python. Well, for whatever reasons, because I'm teaching a Python class too. They want to build a website. So one of the things, MySQL is used a lot for the back ends of web pages for content management. So I created, this is kind of a database that would be used for content management. So you want to serve, it should track the meetings and meeting times, summaries of the meetings that have already happened. It should list all the speakers and presentations presented by the club, as well as upcoming meetings and events. Now, events and presentations can be the same thing. I wasn't thinking of those as distinct things. I just used different words for it. It should also track resources and tutorials. And by that, I'm thinking people could post, this is a really good book, this is a really good video, this is a really good tutorial online for these things. Most of them will have a URL. Even if it's a book, you can just link to it in Amazon, right? Or Barnes & Noble or wherever you want. So that the tutorials are basically the name of it, description of it, and some kind of URL probably. There should be, now general announcements is a little bit weird and I'm not sure how you want to handle that. It could be part of your events. It doesn't necessarily have to be separate. So only members can post. A couple of things is you don't have to implement security in here, but you do need to know who's a member, right? So there needs to be some kind of list of members. Only officers can post meeting times, so you need to know who the officers are. And by officers, all I mean is like president, secretary, treasurer. Most clubs, if anybody ever been in a school club, they require you to have those officers. Mostly president, vice presidents, treasurer, secretary. That's probably about it. So basically, only members can post. Now, you don't have to try to create some kind of restriction in the data tables. I'll show you later how to do that because it's really done through roles and permissions, not done through the tables. But you do need to know who the members are so that you can validate that they're members so you can post. etc. So that's the club. This is actually pretty open. There's more than one right answer to this, because a lot depends on how you interpret things. And as I said, just do your best. We'll go over it again on Wednesday, but think about what entities you're going to need and what attributes you're going to need in those, and then relate them, and then we'll talk about it on Wednesday, and then move on. Questions? Even with an extra hour's sleep, I'm tired.
Sometimes when you get more sleep, you're more tired.
Well, and I had this done, so I have a clock that I think yes, but it didn't do it right away. So I was looking at the clock and I was thinking, I have another hour to go, but it had adjusted, so it's actually the correct time. And so I ended up having to really scramble to make it on time. Did your installation ever go okay?
Yeah, it's all the default.
That's fine. And I will post on Canvas probably by tomorrow afternoon what we're doing, what the schedule is next week. I don't know, it's possible that if I'm not asked to go in on Wednesday, I'll be here, but it's unlikely. Yes. Oh, so this is, the assignment for this is the draft ERD for MySQL. Yeah, and it's probably there under overdue because we're about a week behind. That's okay.
Should we create like some kind of user for to denote that it's just to anybody, like a public person?
No, not really. They just would be a permission thing.
Okay,
So basically, if you're just from the outside, assuming the website, which we're not going to build, it just means that they can look at anything, but they can't edit or add. Does that make sense?
So that's just like a permission that we would set, so we don't have to actually create like some like unknown user.
No, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
And what will happen so basically what would happen is that if you want to make any changes to the website, you'd have to log in.
Gotcha.
But anyone else, you don't have to do it.
I guess kind of based on what you're only doing. Everybody can remember. Add some extra accomplishments and stuff. You know, to consider who's come to the website that aren't registered.
So.
Have you guys ever
I don't
done
understand why
WordPress?
the linking table- I think we did last time.
No, because MySQL is underneath WordPress, so a lot of the permissions are stuff to the same.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you're like a men's
I've seen it
so
on
this
the-
is-
Stuff like that. Everybody's a user.
Yeah, no.
Officer or-
Yeah, WordPress is basically a content
So
management.
many members
It was not the-
can attend many
Oh.
meetings, and many meetings can have.
Well, you could get you into it so that it has
So in this case, I have to be
descriptive
a
language.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to stop the video
Yeah.
so it doesn't have quite as long a dead spot as the morning one. Do you need to see this still? Let me stop the video though. I have to unzoom to stop the video.
Well, I'm just trying to